Hey guys, it's Tyler from Nelly Security, and today we're going to start our video series focusing on the Uniview motorized lens security cameras. In our last video series, we focused on the Uniview fixed lens security cameras. Now, while these fixed lens cameras are incredible and powerful, they do have a few limitations. First and most obvious, their lens is fixed at a given length, between 2.8mm and 4mm. Also, these cameras have no edge storage, so the only way to record video is to connect these cameras to an NVR. Finally, except for the Vandal Dome, these cameras do not have any audio input. So if you're looking for something a little more powerful and something that overcomes these limitations, the Uniview motorized lens cameras are definitely worth your consideration. These cameras have fantastic zoom capabilities, responsive controls, a MicroSD card slot, audio inputs, and the turrets even have a built-in mic. Now, as you can tell, there's a lot to learn about these cameras, so let's go ahead and jump right into the unboxing. So here in front of me, I have our three Uniview motorized models. We have our motorized bullet, our motorized Vandal Dome, and our motorized turret. Now, all three of these models come in two different resolutions. We have 4 megapixel 1440p, and we also have 8 megapixel or 4K Ultra HD. If we open up one of these boxes, we can find a few things that all three of these cameras have in common. First, you'll find your quick start guide, your weatherproof requirements document, and your drill template. We also have our mounting hardware and our weatherproof grommet for weatherproofing our network connections. Our Vandal Dome and bullet also come with a hex wrench, which you'll use for removing the vandal-proof dome, as well as adjusting the angle of the bullet camera. With that, let's take a look at each of these cameras individually. Let's start with our turret camera. Now we have a very nice turret camera here. It's a pretty good size. It's quite a bit bigger than the fixed lens model, but for a camera with a motorized optical zoom, it's actually pretty compact. It's got a pretty good form factor. Now this camera is very tough and durable with its all metal construction. You can see we've got the Uniview logo right there. It looks very nice. Now both models of this camera have a very similar zoom range. In the 4 megapixel model, it goes from 2.7mm to 12mm, whereas in the 4K model, it goes from 2.8mm to 12mm. So really there's just that 1/10 of a millimeter difference in the wider end of the zoom range. So all in all, it's not going to be that noticeable. Now where you are going to notice the difference is in the field of view. When it's zoomed all the way out, the 4K camera has a 114-degree field of view, whereas the 4 megapixel version only has a 91-degree field of view. However, when zoomed all the way in at 12 millimeters, the 4K camera still has a slightly wide field of view at 47 degrees, whereas the 4 megapixel version has a nice and tight field of view of 27 degrees. Now, here's one thing that's really cool about these turrets. If you look closely, you'll see that this does have a built-in microphone, which is really nice. Both models of the turret do have this microphone, and that's something that you won't find in the bullet or in the Vandal Dome. Now, if you look on the side of the camera here, you'll see that there is a little compartment that we can unscrew. And underneath here, you will find a slot for a MicroSD card, as well as your reset button. So besides the optical zoom, the biggest difference between the fixed lens and the motorized lens cameras is that these motorized cameras do have the ability to save video directly to the camera via edge storage. So if you don't have an NVR and still want to save video with your cameras, you're probably going to want to go with a motorized camera. Now our turrets do have the simplest pigtail of the three cameras. That's because, as we said earlier, the microphone is built into the camera. So since there is no need for audio input connections, all we have here in the pigtail is your Cat5 Ethernet connection, as well as your 12-volt DC connection. Now these turret cameras do come apart into 3 pieces for installation and adjustment, and I will show you how to do that now. Simply take a flathead screwdriver and loosen this screw a bit. Then we will simply slide this arrow into the unlocked position here on the base. And that's how easy this camera comes apart. And now we have this base that we can go install with our 3 screws. Once we install the camera, we can adjust this lens however we need to. Simply slide this cover back over the camera so that the arrow on the cover lines up with the unlocked arrow on the base. Then we will twist the cover in a clockwise direction to lock it into place. And we will simply retighten that screw with our flathead screwdriver. And just like that, our motorized turret camera is ready to go. Next, let's check out this bullet camera. We have another very nice sized camera here, also quite a bit larger than its fixed lens counterpart. This is still a very nice size for a motorized bullet. Let's talk briefly about this lens information. Both the 4 megapixel and 4K versions have the exact same zoom range, from 2.8 millimeters zoomed out all the way to 12 millimeters zoomed in. But similar to the turret, these cameras do have different fields of view. The 4K version is wider, moving from about 114 degrees at its widest point to about 47 degrees in its narrowest point. The 4 megapixel motorized bullet goes from its widest angle at 91 degrees to its narrowest angle at 27 degrees. Here on the bottom of the camera, we do have this little flap that is secured by Phillips head screws. Underneath this flap, we do have access to a MicroSD card slot. I don't know if you can see it in there, but we also have access to our optical zoom. We can reach in there and manually adjust the zoom if we need to. This is just a really simple way to adjust that lens right from the installation site without having to jump onto the web interface and adjust it through the on-screen controls. Now, before you shut this latch, just make sure that this seal is nice and tight around this compartment and that you tighten these screws as tight as they will go. We definitely don't want any weather elements to get inside our camera. If we take a look here at the pigtail, we will see that this does have a few additional connections. We have our Ethernet connection and our 12 volt DC connection, but we also have an alarm in and out and an audio in and out connection. Now, the 4K bullet does have an additional connection, which is this BNC video out. This can be useful for testing your camera's video or connecting this to a spot monitor without having to go through the network. Now, this camera does come with a hex wrench for quick and simple angle adjustments. It is a 3-axis adjustment, but you will only find 2 hex screws. By loosening this first screw at the top of the base, you open up both the horizontal and vertical axes. And by loosening the second screw, we will be able to adjust the angle and tilt of the lens. And there you have our Uniview motorized lens bullet. Last but not least, we have our Vandal Dome. And here we have yet another beautiful camera. This Vandal Dome is very resilient and durable, again with its all-metal construction, but also with its IK10 Vandal-proof glass dome. So let's talk about this motorized zoom lens. It is identical to the motorized bullet. For both 4 megapixels and 4K, this lens ranges from 2.8 millimeters to 12 millimeters. And again, the field of view for the 4K goes from 114 degrees to about 47 degrees, whereas the field of view for the 4 megapixel version goes from 91 degrees to 27 degrees. This Vandal Dome actually has 2 pigtails. The first one consisting of your network cable and your 12 volt DC cable connections. The second pigtail has your audio in and out connections, your alarm in and out connections, and like the 4K bullet, this Vandal Dome does have a BNC video out connection. The difference is this connection is available on both the 4K and the 4 megapixel versions. While this camera body does not act as a full junction box, it does have this little cap that we can remove in order to channel the cables out the side of the camera if we need to. Now let's get under this dome. And now here we are under the dome and we can see this beautiful lens a little closer. We can manually adjust the zoom of this lens using the ring underneath. We also have our MicroSD card slot as well as our reset button here underneath the dome. We can freely rotate this lens horizontally, and if we loosen these tension screws on the side, we can also adjust the vertical axis of the lens as well as the lens's tilt. And that's pretty much it for our Uniview motorized Vandal Domes. Thanks so much for watching this unboxing video. As you can see, these Uniview motorized lens cameras really do have a lot to offer. So be sure to stay tuned for the next video when we install these cameras and set them up on our network here at Nelly Security. If this video was helpful for you, give it a like and be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos in this Uniview motorized lens series. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you next time.